Today, we recap the bottom half of the table from what was the 21-22 Premier League season. Go through all 10 clubs, bottom to top. The goods, the bads, the uglies. There's a lot of ugly in this. But we give some silver linings at the end for each club, so stick around. Listen to this episode of the Premiership Perusal podcast.
Manchester City are still alive here. Balotelli, Aguero! Back, Fuchs. And the ball in behind Damian Vardy! It's 11! It's heaven for Jamie Vardy!
You are an ostrich. Well, your head must be in the sand. Is your head in the sand? Are you flexible enough to get your head in the sand?
Now the fans are shouting every week, Louis van Gaal's army! Louis van Gaal's army!
Feet after a fabulous start, the game just got away from you there.
I have nothing to say.
Nothing to say about the game at all.
Drama from day one! This is the league we want to watch!
Well, good to see you, Hank. Glad you could come in off the beach. You're looking quite tanned.
Oh, we're always tanned out here.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm glad you could join me. We can talk about some teams that were not so good. Some teams that were okay. Definitely no teams that were very good. I'll tell you that. We're talking 20 through 11.
Yeah. I mean, the only team that could even come close to being qualified as, like, pretty good. Well, there's pretty good. Good. Just straight up good would have to be, like, Newcastle post-takeover.
Right. And that's like...
Yeah, that's asking
good.
a lot.
Half good.
Yes.
Half terrible. Half terrible. So let's get right into it. Let's talk about number 20, the basement dwellers, first of three relegated. That's right, Norwich.
Where did it all go wrong, Norwich?
It's got to be the start of the season, don't you say?
Yeah, I mean, early on, they won. They didn't win until that Brentford match, and then they sacked Farka.
Yep.
And that was like 9 weeks in.
Yeah, it looks like they got their first win start of November.
Yeah, brutal. Just going through general stuff here. Pookie, top score with 11. They're second. Not even tied. Just second leading scorer, Josh Sargent with 2. 2 goals.
2 goals.
Yeah, I kind of... And then I went through... We took a look at best guys. I ranked their best guys based off stats, based off how much they played, based off what I could remember. I didn't try to recall much from Norwich. So it was kind of just 3 guys thrown up there. But from what I remember, if I had to classify their best 3 guys as Giannoulis, Norman, and Pookie. Is there anyone that you want to throw in there? Did you want to give Tim Kroll a shout out?
No.
For being the 15th best keeper in the league?
Yeah.
16th best?
I mean, even for me, I think I would just say... maybe Norman, maybe Pookie.
I tried to go with their top 3 guys.
Yeah. Pookie wasn't very good, but
I mean,
everything went through him.
Yeah.
So it was kind of like he had to be the best guy, even though he was not very good.
I mean,
best of the worst.
You look at guys, and we'll get to their downfall as to why, but guys that are supposed to step up and be like at least okay for him, Rashica.
Yeah.
Just fell flat on his face.
Yeah, not good. Sargent was pretty bad for a while. He kind of turned it on, and then he got hurt right away.
Yeah.
Adam Ida
he
came
showed
into
flashes
the team
too, very much like Sargent.
And looked good, but got hurt right away. I suppose Grant Hanley at times was
all right,
serviceable.
But I mean, that's when he's playing low block too.
Yeah.
And then, I mean, if you're trying to build out of the back, you don't want Grant Hanley. And guess what Norwich tried to do a good amount of the time, which we told them not to do. It's like a dog going in the house or something.
Right.
And you just got to fucking be like, stop it.
Get off the couch, would you?
Newspaper chasing around Norwich. Best stretch, 11-6 to 11-30. 2 wins, including wins against obviously the first one against Brentford, then beating Southampton, a draw with Wolves, and a draw with Newcastle.
Really inspiring.
Nothing to write home about, but
And that's Newcastle when they sucked.
yeah. Worst stretch, 2 separate 6-game losing streaks along with a 5-gamer as well. You think about that. That's
a lot of games.
That's 17 games. That's about half the damn season you went on a losing streak.
Yeah, just about.
Brutal.
Yeah.
Absolutely brutal. Trends with this team, the worst attack, bar none. It wasn't even close. They had less than 3 shots on target per game.
Yeah, I mean, there was really no secondary option. It was just get it to Pookie.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, just there's a bunch of other secondary sets too that just describe it. It's like they had the longest average shot per Premier League team. And you might say, well, what does that really say? That means that they had no plan. Mm-hmm. They eventually just got to a point to where they're like, they throw their hands up and they're like, I'm just going to shoot.
Yeah.
Or even like a counterattack broke wrong. Like, why are you shooting 18 yards out on average? Brutal. One of the worst defenses, if not the worst. Would you say they're the worst?
I don't think so. I think
they're I would say 19.
I think Leeds is probably the worst.
Yeah, Leeds was really bad.
But Norwich, a lot of their downfall, like you talked about briefly, you were talking
Self-inflicted.
about self-inflicted, playing out of the back. Why does Norwich think they can play out of the back? Just because the trend is to play out of the back, that does not mean that you should be. Yeah. Norwich is not a team that follows trends. They spend very little money. They try and punch above their weight. They have to go in with alternative strategies rather than do what everyone else is trying to do, because if they do that, it's just going to be worse than everyone.
It's one thing if you're a smaller or even mid-table club, say like Crystal Palace, and it's like you have guys that are capable on the ball, like Guehi, like Anderson, guys who are actually good at passing.
Yeah.
You don't have that luxury at Norwich. No. You have Ben Gibson and Hanley who are out there to kind of block shots and to win headers,
right,
to clear the ball.
And like you said, they're guys that excel at a low block and not much else.
So why are you doing possession?
Yeah, exactly.
It's a matter of knowing your personnel. It's really bad.
Yeah.
What else was there? Kind of lower middle of the pack in terms of passing and tackling. It's kind of what you expect out of them. I mean, at some point, their passing was probably inflated if you think about it, because it's like they'll be down 3-0 and teams might just let them have some possession, but it's not going to result in anything anyways.
Yeah.
Blocking shots was a strength, and not that shabby at intercepting the ball, but when you're primarily on defense, you're probably going to have a lot of that stuff kind of bumped up.
And it doesn't matter if you intercept the ball if you can do nothing with it.
Yeah, if you turn the ball over just as much.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, they were pinned in a lot of times, allowed the most opposition possession in their defensive third. And, another thing that didn't help was their pressing shit. If your pressing sucks in midfield, that's going to put so much stress on the back line already.
Yeah.
Not to mention, the playing out of the back is already a major issue. But if you can't really get any semblance of an advantage in midfield occasionally, I mean, you're asking to go down.
Absolutely.
I think their fun stat has to be they conceded 12 penalties.
Yeah, how many of those were Ben Gibson and Grant Hanley?
That's 1 out of 3 games practically. Maybe a little over that. It's like 1.32 or something like that. But that's insane. That every third game you're just conceding a penalty.
And it seemed like they were always coming back. Someone would make a poor pass trying to play it out of the back. And
yeah.
Then you get roped into making a bad challenge and self-inflicted.
Yeah.
Anyways, downfalls, terrible attack, allowed the defense to get exposed. I mean, the midfield was pretty much non-existent. Guys like Billy Gilmore, hugely
Oh, yeah.
disappointing. Rashica, like you said, was not very good. Kabak,
Yeah.
he got hurt or something.
He's out. He's
Yeah.
out forever.
Gone forever. Not able to get anything out of Cantwell. Partially self-inflicted on his part, I think, by having a poor attitude. But
Yeah. I'd have a poor attitude on Norwich, too.
yeah, overall terrible season.
Grade F minus.
F
Is there?
minus.
It should. I thought about putting grade and then just putting Norwich.
Non-applicable. they're a new grade. They're the, instead of gold standard, they're like the fail standard or something.
They're terrible. That's what they are. Yeah, I mean the summer transfers. It felt like a team who had never played together, which is strange because normally like you can see that early on with like Villa and stuff, but eventually it gets like reasonably better.
Yeah.
This team looked like they had just met each other like every single week.
Yeah.
It was just a bunch of mercenaries, and the sad part is, it's a bunch of shit mercenaries. It's not even like it's PSG or something where you have like good players and they just start throwing together.
Yeah, right. They had the benefit of being able to sell Buendia, and then they just brought in like a mishmash of guys
Yeah.
that didn't really complement each other. He brought in Bill Gilmore on loan, who was terrible.
Might have had like the opposite of whatever the opposite is of what Conor Gallagher did for a Chelsea loanee.
Yeah.
Billy Gilmore did that virtual opposite. After showing flashes at the Euros for Scotland, he looked fine.
Yeah. Yeah. And it wasn't like he didn't get opportunities. He had plenty of opportunities.
Everyone had opportunities on this team.
Yeah.
Opportunities to hurt our eyes, which they succeeded at. Silver lining, I put good manager.
Yeah.
That's about all you got going for you, Norwich.
Yeah,
You do have to rebuild your squad. So
I would say also the fact that obviously they're experienced in this and them going down isn't catastrophic.
yeah.
So they can regroup.
But how
try
long
and
can
bounce
you
back.
rely on Teemu Pukki?
True. I mean,
To
they're
be
running him into the
championship-
ground.
Yeah, to be your championship go-to.
Yeah.
Sam's take. Let's hear this. I didn't see this added.
Yeah, I added this in for every team. Added my take. I said, get the shit team out of the Premier League until they are willing to spend enough money on players worth a damn.
I mean, you know what I sent in our private message? I think they need to be like, not necessarily like Derby punish, but like enough points to where they finish like 18th in the championship every year for like 5 years. And
Punish
think about,
them for making us watch them every other year.
yeah, think about what you've done, Norwich.
Yeah.
Think about it. Moving on.
Moving on to
The
number
team
19.
that I don't have as much faith to come back up in.
No.
Talking about Watford.
Watford.
Top scorer, Manuel Dennis with 10. He had 2 in the year 2022. And then second we had tied was Josh King and Ismail Yassar with 5.
That is terrible.
That's brutal. Well, you know, for Josh King, 5, you'd probably take 5.
One of those, 3 of those were in one game.
Yeah. You know, he's an Everton.
Slayer.
Yeah, pretty much. The eater of Everton. He eats up their defense. Yeah, their best guys I had ranked Kuchka, Dennis, Samir, and I threw a shout out for Ben Foster. He wasn't very good at saving, but his distribution this year was quite well. But
Yeah,
those are the
I
3.
think for Watford standards, he was
Fine.
definitely not the weak point in that team.
No.
I think he was one of the better players on that team. A lot of people probably didn't even expect him to start. I don't think we did. You know,
No.
we
No,
expected
Bachmann.
to hold it down. But credit to Foster. He put in a good effort. Kuchka, he's the type of guy, on his day, he looked really good.
Yeah, he looked fine. I think he could be like a rotational guy for a mid-table club. Not necessarily playing all Premier League games and stuff, but he could be bouncing around. He'll probably go back to like Italy or something, but
Yeah.
he was fine. Dennis, hot start, kind of flamed out. Makes you wonder, is it just kind of form? But then again, he kind of got upset at Watford about the AFCON thing, about them not letting him go.
Yeah.
And then, I don't know. I still go back to when they had him central, he was clicking, and then they like moved him out wide because Sarr and João Pedro and other players were not really doing it.
Mm-hmm.
And it kind of just isolated him. I feel like that kind of ruined whatever momentum he had, whatever form.
Yeah, he never really got going under Roy Hodgson.
Not really under Ranieri that much either.
Well, who did?
No one.
No one.
Best stretch to start the year, 8-14 to 9-18, winning 3 of their first 6 to open the year. Beat Villa, Palace, and Norwich.
Even that, you look at it. Villa brought in some new guys that were trying to figure out what was going on with that. Palace, same thing.
Mm-hmm.
Norwich is Norwich.
Yeah. They're not very impressive wins.
I mean, that first game, they looked really good against Villa,
But then
especially Sarr.
They almost just threw it away.
They had one of the worst performances I've ever seen against Brentford in the second week.
Or Brighton.
Was it Brighton?
Yeah.
Oh, Brighton, yeah.
What was I going to say? Oh, about, what's his name? Chisco.
Chisco.
Why didn't they just keep him?
You know, looking back, they probably should have.
I mean, he's, like 14th place? Who cares? 15th place? Is fine.
I mean, they might have done better under him, honestly, throughout the full season. You would have thought bringing in Ranieri would have gone better than it did.
Yeah, I don't know.
Somehow it just, I don't know. It didn't work.
And then Woy had something going on. What that was, we don't really know. He made their defense slightly better. I like how the mic is picking that up. Let's see. Best formation, 4-3-3. Most wins. This is the formation they had, which makes sense, I guess.
Yeah, I think that suits them the most, but not like it was amazing by any means.
No, not at all. Trends for Watford season, didn't create a ton, and they weren't very efficient at taking the chances. That's, coming into the year, you would have thought, all right, if they get like 12 to 15 goal contributions out of Sarr, and they get like 8 to 10, 8 to 12 out of João Pedro, you kind of you almost have to go in the year when you're a bad team and think, how are we going to get to a certain goal number? Not just points, but goals. Because a lot of times with these crap teams, it always comes down to, can you score?
Right.
With Watford, the chances weren't there a ton, but there were chances.
Yeah, there definitely were chances. And then, I mean, so many times it would just end up like you get the ball in a good spot and then it all falls apart.
And I feel like that's the thing, too, is like, sure, they didn't have a ton of chances and they're kind of near the bottom, but it felt like whatever chances they did have were pretty damn good chances.
Yeah, compared to like the chances that, for instance, like Norwich is making.
Yeah. Yeah, no, they were in well enough shooting position and stuff, and it'd be like skied, or it'd be like a 3-on-2, and just for no reason, a pass is way behind the guy making the run, and it's like, oh. Virtually bottom in possession in midfield and attack. Kind of goes without saying they're kind of just going for counterplay for the most part, which makes sense. Low on through balls. Found that kind of surprising in a sense of like, in a way it's not really because they don't have like a maestro in midfield to pick the passes, but when you have that much pace up front, you feel like you could be sending a few more through, especially if you're playing on the counter.
Especially that if you look at the first game, they were just through balls left and right.
Yeah.
And then they had another game where they did that. I forget what game it was, but other than those games, it wasn't really that kind of system.
Yeah, which is so strange. I really didn't get what they're going for at times.
Because that's when you can really utilize guys like Dennis and Sarr.
Yeah.
Hitting on the counter.
Even if it's just they run down the field and draw a foul or something, then it's like you have a free kick chance.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. Pretty good at dribbling for shots, but didn't result in goals due to lack of efficiency in shooting and dribbling. They dribbled a lot for their stuff, and obviously the nutmeg stat is wild, the most nutmegs all time. But they weren't super efficient with it compared to, how often they went with that style. They had it taken off them quite a bit. High in defensive actions that led to a shot. They're able to turn defense into attack. I mean, that makes sense if you're going to counter. High in clearances, tackles, interceptions. That's kind of just part of, you're going to be sitting back. You have to protect Craig Cathcart. You can't let guys like him get exposed, Sam.
True that.
Because they will if you let them. Yeah, tied for second most yellows. Or tied for most second yellows with Arsenal. I like that stat. I feel like the main thing too with Watford and where they really went wrong was last year they could rely on their defense in the Championship. This year their defense was by far and away bottom 5, probably bottom 3. Norwich, Leeds, them. Maybe Everton at times was pretty bad too.
Yeah, I feel like you hit the nail on the head here where you say if they were in position, then they weren't that bad. But
yeah,
a lot of times they'd end up and there's like two guys right next to each other and they're like getting in each other's way. And it's just a hot mess.
They really overloaded at times, which I guess is fine, but sometimes it was too much overload, and any chance they had to break it, the opponents, that is, being they, it resulted in a great chance because no one was on like one half of the pitch
right
to where the ball was going. So
there's overloading and there's just awful positioning.
Yeah, exactly. Downfall, lack of midfield presence that connects defense to attack. Consistently poor center back play in the first half of the year. And the big boys not stepping up enough. Sarn, mainly João Pedro.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think that people don't talk about really how bad Sissoko was for them. I mean, I get they got him on a free, but I feel like most announcers like mention when they're talking about Watford, they act like he was like fine.
You want to talk about Sissoko? What about Danny Rose?
This team was full of just random guys. Really was.
At least Sissoko was like a constant presence in the team. Danny Rose was like 5 games in, and they're like,
they cut him.
This guy is so bad.
They had to cut him.
He's so bad. He thought he was going to play for AC Milan.
Well, AC Milan is now winning the Scudetto, and Danny Rose is nowhere to be found.
Yeah.
Tough scene. Grade F. Was on the brink of giving him a D minus, but
yeah,
give him an F. Just because they gave us a little bit of hope at the start of the year that they might stay up.
Yeah, you could always see the potential there.
Yeah. Silver lining, chance to rebuild, acquire some funds. You can sell Dennis, you can sell Sarr. That could bring in like 50, 60 mil.
Problem is, you're selling those guys, 1, after you got relegated, 2, at probably the lowest their value has been for like the past 3 years.
Well, I don't know about Dennis. Dennis, they bought this last summer.
Yes.
For like
I'm
5 mil.
talking more so Sarr.
Yeah, I mean, they probably could have taken an offer for like 40 mil, and I don't know. They might get 30 this summer. I feel like they could from like Everton. I don't rule out poor transfers from certain Premier League clubs. Yeah. I don't think Sarr's worth 30, but some team will talk themselves into it, I'm sure.
I just feel like I don't think it'll happen. I think he'll stay at Watford.
I could see it. You never know. Also, chance to right the wrong. They bring in a young manager now. How about we keep him? How about we get some semblance of a culture going at Watford?
Yeah, absolutely.
Not just having a bunch of random like 60-year-old like Italian guys and Roy Hodgson come in and be like, hey.
Lasting for 2 months.
Exactly.
Yeah, my take on this, on Watford, worst run club in Premier League history.
Oh,
It's amazing that they actually got into the Premier League in the first place. Also amazing that they got back into the Premier League after getting relegated. It will be even more amazing if they can get back again.
I think they will, just not within the next 2 to 3 years. I think it'll be more down the line.
Yeah.
What was I going to say? You know, it's weird because they wouldn't have been relegated that COVID year if they just didn't play again, which they were in talks to. But Project Restart, they couldn't get anything going.
Yeah.
And it fell apart on them. So, moving on, the last relegated team, Burnley, in 18th. Started off top scorer Max Cornet with 9. Ben Mee and Chris Wood with 3 in second place. How about that? Chris Wood doesn't get enough talk about for being... I don't care that Newcastle had to buy someone. You could have thrown me up front, and you would have saved £20 million.
They should have bought Kiefer Moore, honestly.
Should have bought anybody. Chris Wood had no form.
No, absolutely not. Wasn't even worth his release clause of like
20.
20. Yeah.
Yeah, not worth. What do you get for Newcastle?
Worth
two,
like
1, 2?
10.
Got like 5 goals on the year and played like 34 games, 35 games. Brutal. Best guys: Nick Pope, Cornet, Mr. Taylor. You put Ben Mee and Roberts in there. I respect it.
Yes. Yep.
I just want to go like a hockey style first 3 stars.
Okay. Well, I have an opinion too.
Yes,
Hank.
and I'm glad you shared it. I just wanted to throw
I'm just
who I thought the
messing with
best
you.
3 guys were. So Pope, by far,
Yes.
was an elite level keeper, not only in the Premier League, but in all of Europe this season.
Mm-hmm.
Cornet showed flashes, gave them life when it looked like there was no life at Burnley,
Yeah.
even though he did miss some tap-ins.
Yeah, and a concern about durability with Courtney as well.
True. Charlie Taylor, solid defense. Their best or second best attacking wing player, not ideal to say if you're Burnley, but it is what it is. He was one of the most important guys in terms of their attack, swinging balls in.
Yeah, I got to say he surprised me. He wasn't a guy that was on my radar prior to this season, but I think he is a solid option for the lower half teams that are going to play in that fashion that need a fullback who can swing and crosses. I think he's pretty good at that.
Yeah, and I mean his defense held up, although Burnley kind of sit back, so maybe he get exposed if you play a little more open. Who knows? Ben Mee, class back there for Burnley.
Yeah, I've always said I think
like
he's better than Tarkovsky.
I feel like part of why they went down too is him being out for so long was a killer. Not that Nat Collins was like bad, but he wasn't that great.
Yeah, he was.
And he's still younger, so you got to kind of give him some of a break. But I mean, at the same time, he's no Ben Mee.
When you don't have your team captain for
Yes,
however many games that he missed towards the end of the season, quite a few.
Connor Roberts showed some flashes in attack as well.
Yeah, it took a while for him to get integrated into the team, but once he was in, he played, most of the games.
Yeah.
I think it would have been better if they put him in sooner. But I think he might have been dealing with some injury problems. But that was a good addition.
Still.
That's like what the type of guy that Burnley should be going after, these high-level championship players.
Yeah, to say the least. Best stretch, 4-6 to 4:30. They went 4-1-1 wins against Everton, Wolves, Southampton, Watford, and a draw against West Ham. They
Mike Jackson.
They almost had the great escape.
Mike Jackson coming in almost against all odds, keeping them up.
Now he's going to be replaced by Vincent Kompany.
Yeah, it's crazy. I don't know. I think Mike Jackson did a good job towards the end of the season.
I think so too.
Maybe
I think he
he'll
deserved a chance.
Maybe he'll get a job somewhere else.
Worst run, 1 win in first 25 games. Also had a 4-game losing streak in March into April.
Yeah, honestly, I mean, 4-game losing streaks not too bad,
they happen.
but the one win in the 25 games.
Yeah.
It's amazing that they got as close to not getting relegated as they did.
Yes.
Because after 25 games and you have one win, that's almost like a sure thing. You're getting relegated.
Yeah. I couldn't agree more. A bunch of draws, but that ain't enough. That ain't enough playa.
Yeah.
Best formation, they really only rocked a 4-4-2, which makes sense. That's
Classic.
Burnley. Yeah, that's Burnley ball.
That's what Norwich needs to learn. Like, stay in your lane.
Yeah, exactly.
Do your thing.
Trends, we mentioned Pope already, was borderline elite. Second worst at shot on target percentage and shot on targets per game. I mean, a lot of that's coming down to Wood/Vogt and a mix of. They got almost nothing out of Dwight McNeil in terms of like goal production this year.
Yeah, and then you look at, there was always that second striker position that was unoccupied. You know, whether Cornet was playing up top or
Barnes
Weghorst.
towards the end, or J-Rod sometimes.
Barnes, J-Rod, Vidra. Those guys, you were just not getting enough production out of.
Yeah, you might as well have thrown Sam up there.
I think with a more solid second striker,
Sean Dyche
they
should
would
have
have
just ran
stayed
out there.
Yes, he should have. And of course, like you said, Dwight McNeil underperformed this season.
Yeah, big time.
Disappointing. We expected quite a bit out of him.
If they were going to stay up, which
Yeah.
we had them going down anyway, so.
Yeah.
Let's see. Yeah, real shit passing. Crossed a bunch. Last in defensive actions leading to a shot, so there's not really much in terms of turning all that defense that you're playing into attack. That's going to be a massive problem. You need to score goals. How are you going to do that if your main thing is defending? High amount of aerial encounters. Decent rank in terms of success there. Their defense allowed the most completed passes into the box. That doesn't sound good. Sounds like you're really leaky for a team that's supposed to be kind of real strong at defense.
Yeah, and I think also the fact that they're playing 4-4-2 really doesn't help them. They lose a guy in the midfield. The guys that they have in the midfield,
Brownhill is fine.
Jack
Cork was
Westwood, you know, these aren't guys that are going to be able to make up for that.
Westwood's almost like a going forward, attacking kind of guy for them, which, I mean, he's just kind of all around at everything anyways. But, yeah, they don't really have much of a defensive anchor in midfield, yet they don't really have a guy who excels in attack.
Right.
But yet I don't feel like anyone's super outstanding at anything in particular.
No.
It's like a really shit version of Brentford's midfield.
Mm-hmm.
And the only, like, shining polish on the turd is Mr. Brownhill.
Yeah.
Middle and tackles, interceptions, best at clearing and blocking. Obviously, we know Burnley, even though they might not have been as strong defensively as years past, they're still going to be near the top in that. Opponents last in tackle and interceptions versus Burnley. That is about all you need to know. Teams aren't taking the ball off them because Burnley doesn't have the ball in attack ever.
Yeah.
So, also, most clearances came against Burnley, which is obviously because they have no semblance of an attack and open play. All they can do is cross. Downfall. Quality of D wasn't quite good as past years, but don't kid yourself, the attack was horrendous.
Mm-hmm.
Slow start put them behind the 8 ball, and lack of transfers finally caught up to them in the long run. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, absolutely. They were living on borrowed time with their transfer strategy. It was only a matter of time. We all saw it coming. You can't survive on Jack Cork and Westwood and
Goodmanson and bunch of guys that are not Premier League quality.
You know, Matty Vidra, Ashley Barnes, guys that are past it. Even going into the season, you have Chris Wood, who was decent last season, but heavily underperforming. You don't really make enough changes in the winter window. Of course, Burnley never going to shake things up that big, but
No. Grade F.
yeah.
Has to be said. You went down. F. Silver lining, much like Watford, a new beginning awaits them. It's been a little while since Burnley's, been out of the Premier League. What did we say, like 7 years? Something like that, 8 years?
I think it was 8.
No Sean Dyche. Fresh start can be exciting at times. We saw that for Palace last year. Obviously, they were staying up, but I don't know. What are your thoughts on their silver lining?
Yeah, I think it'll be interesting. I mean, like we were saying, it seemed like they were living on borrowed time in the Premier League, and the fact that they made it into the Europa League that one season, that's amazing. Their finances should be pretty good from being in the league for as long as they have been.
Yet they have that massive debt apparently looming.
Yeah,
that loan.
They had the leverage takeout, but I still think they'll be okay. They don't spend crazy money. I'm sure they'll sell Cornet and probably Pope and maybe Tarkovsky's leaving on a free, but
yeah.
maybe one more decent money signing going outbound. Yeah. So my take on Burnley, just like I said, you can't get away with not spending on transfers forever. Long time in the making.
Yeah. Couldn't agree more. Moving on. Leeds. Barely
Leeds.
holding on.
By the skin of their teeth.
Top scorer, Rafinha, 11. Second, Jack Harrison, 8. Best guys, kind of basic. I gave the number 1 star to our guy, and I was surprised at the stats in terms of his efficiency and stuff and where he ranked amongst Premier League players, like with his play time. Mm-hmm. It showed it. He was their best guy. Normally, you wouldn't see it. I saw it.
I thought this was interesting that you went with him, number 1. I think a big thing was he didn't play. He played maybe half the season or so.
Yeah.
I would say Harrison. Was the best and most consistent. You have a guy like Rafinha who's got higher highs, but also his average level, I don't think was as high.
Harrison was like sneaky, not good in the first half in terms of like passing and stuff. But then
That's
again,
true.
who wasn't at Leeds?
Yeah.
So it's hard to say.
That's true.
But we are talking about Joe Gelhardt. I have him number 1 star, number 2 Rafinha, and Harrison 3. You could really swap Rafinha and Harrison because Rafinha had a long run too. It'd be unfair to say, oh, Harrison didn't do much in the first half. There was a stretch where Rafinha was like just a no-show or like just not taking his chances.
Oh, absolutely. I thought overall this season Rafinha was a massive letdown versus what we saw last season.
Yeah, I mean, and then part of it too, not to just completely shit on him, but it's like he doesn't have all the guys around him that he's used to. So there's going to be a massive focus from other teams, like take this guy out.
Yeah.
They have Robin Koch in midfield and not Calvin Phillips and stuff like you.
Stu Dallas.
Yeah, exactly. Like, and then even like guys like Ailing and stuff were hurt for a good amount of the year. Cooper, like a lot of their main guys were hurt. So
Yeah.
it's like a lot of the focus kind of fell on him. But still, he didn't really step up a ton.
Yeah, speaking on Luke Ayling, he's one guy I wanted to touch on. I thought he was good last season as well. This season, like you said, struggled with injuries, and when he was playing, I thought he played pretty poorly.
Yeah.
He had some really bad moments. One that stands out, that red card against Arsenal.
Yeah, he's kind of just overshadowed by that Wolves come from behind victory where he got the goal. I think people would probably give him the benefit of the doubt, but
Yeah.
no, it was virtually a down year for everyone at Leeds. And not to mention
Absolutely.
another guy that was down and out this year with injury again, Pat Bamford.
Yeah.
He looked, I guess, fine. We didn't really get a long run, but he did score like I think 3 or 4 when he did play. So I don't know. He might have had a down year anyways, but he's still probably on pace for double digits.
Yeah, and like you say, it's hard to judge a guy who could not stay healthy for more than like 2 games.
Yeah, and then when he did get healthy, they put him back in for 90, and he immediately got hurt right away.
Yeah.
Best stretch, 313 to 425. They went 3-2-0, beating Norwich, Wolves, Watford, drew with Palace and Southampton. Not spectacular, but got it done.
Getting results where you need it. Beating a team like Wolves, that always helps.
Yes.
Drawing against Palace and Southampton, that's not terrible. Good to get points off them, but there were just too many games where they were absolutely descended into chaos. And it was awful.
For no reason. That's Leeds for you.
They tried to play the same exact way that they did last season
With not the same personnel.
with not the same personnel due to injuries and then also poor form on a lot of guys' part as well.
Yes. Worst run, January 22nd through March 10th, the end of Marcelo Bielsa and the beginning of Jesse Marsh. I think they lost 2 to start with Marsh in his reign.
Mm-hmm.
I remember they had that terrible Villa game where they just got ran off the pitch.
Yeah.
And you know how Bielsa's run ended. That was tough.
That was tough to watch. Yeah.
Best formation 4-1-4-1 early, but kind of went to 4-2-3-1 to close out the year. Obviously, that 4-1-4-1 is based on Phillips being your linchpin.
Right.
And when you don't have him, and you go against Manchester United the first game, and you have Robin Koch in there instead,
Yeah.
you're bound to lose 6-1 or whatever they did.
Yeah, you're replacing Calvin Phillips with guys like Robin Koch or
Adam
Adam
Forshaw.
Forshaw.
You don't want to know how bad his stats looked.
Oh, I know. I test these all.
Yeah. Trends below average in shooting efficiency, easy to tackle, just kind of predictable. And I feel like that kind of goes with the Rafinha thing too, where it's like teams know how you're going to play right now.
Yeah.
I mean, part of it too is probably quality. Like Rodrigo's not amazing, and you're asking him to do a lot more than he has to.
For the price that they paid.
Yes, he should be doing a lot more. High possession and own third, but not really attack or mid. I mean, they just couldn't really get the ball going forward that much this year in attack. Tops and tackles and efficiency rate, obviously, that's given their style, they're going to have to be running around the pitch, kind of putting on pressure. High in interceptions, but very error-prone backline, which allowed the second most through balls. You just want to take a minute to talk about their defense? Well, we'll say they had the most fouls and yellows, obviously, to protect the back line, but it was bad.
Yeah, it was bad. Cooper, there were signs last season, that he's not the best center back and that Bielsa was getting a lot out of him. Llorente, poor. Koch, when he slipped into center back, wasn't very good either.
Yeah.
Poor giveaways.
Stroik was not bad, but somehow the best that they had.
Right.
And he's more of a defensive mid at times, but they slid him back. I don't know. Their fullback play, too. Mr. Firpo, you were
terrible.
very bad.
Terrible.
Barcelona someone should be put in prison for this stuff that they do, and like Le Barca failed prospect guy that they can sell for like 20 mil.
Yeah.
At any given time. It doesn't even make sense.
It's really egregious.
Yeah. It's blasphemous. They shouldn't be allowed to.
It is.
Downfall, small squad plus injuries equals a bad time. No production out of big name guys like Rodrigo. No production out of Pat Bamford. Production that you need, but you cannot get because they are hurt. Great to give him a D.
It was bad, but they stayed up.
Yeah, exactly. So, silver lining, close strong, I guess. Have the option to sell and rebuild if they really wanted to. I think that there would be a market for. I don't think you get the most out of Phillips. You could. Rafinha, even though he had a down year, I still feel like you could still get at least like 50 mil for him.
Absolutely.
60 mil.
I think you sell Rafinha, you sell Phillips, and that'll go a long way.
Yeah, because then you can at least add to the depth a good amount.
Yeah, they already brought in one signing, Brendan Aronson, young American. Jesse Marsh kind of bringing some guys over from Salzburg. I saw that
FC America.
linked with another guy from Salzburg. It'll be interesting to see how they rebuild. They have a lot of gaps. They need to solidify the midfield, solidify the defense.
Yeah. Absolutely. Your take on it?
My hot take on Leeds. Heavy attack style play only works when you have the right personnel who can produce. Guys like Pat Bamford,
Yes.
Rafinha when he's in form. And you have to draw a line between aggressive and chaotic / sloppy play. A lot of times it just delved into chaos. And this hyper-aggressive style play that suited them before just left them completely vulnerable with no upside because they weren't getting the production.
Yeah, and almost got him relegated.
Yeah.
So, couldn't agree more. Now we move on to your team. 16th place, Everton.
All right.
Top scorer, Richarlison with 10. You would have thought that he had like a club record, like 50 goals, the way the fans love him. Damari Gray, Dominic Calvert-Lewin with 5. I don't remember Calvert-Lewin getting 5. I felt like he had like 2 or 3. But
Yeah, he was injured quite a bit.
yes. Best guys I have ranked Pickford, Doucouré, and then Gray / Townsend. They're really good early, but faded pretty hard. And I put them over Gordon, but obviously Anthony Gordon deserving of a shout.
Yeah.
Your thoughts on that? It's not really saying much because Pickford wasn't even like that good, but when they needed him most, he shined.
He's pretty clutch. I think I would put Gordon higher. Yeah, I think I would say Gordon second.
Have you considered that Townsend had a goal of the season candidate?
Well, I mean, he's got like at least one of those a year.
Best stretch, 4-1-1 to start the year. Southampton, Brighton, Burnley, and Norwich, and they drew Leeds. Very fraudulent.
It was very fraudulent. They looked pretty good to start the season, and then it took a turn. Took a nosedive.
Yes. Worst was from December 12th through March 13th, 1-1-9.
Oof. Yeah,
In
it was
11
getting pretty
games.
dire.
Yes. Yes, it was. Best formation, 4-1-4-1 with Rafa, with Fat Frank, 3-4-3. What? 3 at the back? I mean, 2 of the midfielders were just, I guess, not even like wing backs. They're just kind of like full backs. Mikolenko and Coleman pushed up. So, trends near the bottom 5 or 6 in many shooting stats. Second worst passing team, conceded a lot of shots. Opponent's shooting efficiency was quite high, meaning they were really getting exposed in defense. And it kind of, when I saw that, I thought, oh, yeah, it did seem like when Everton conceded a lot of times, the team would be in possession and they're passing the ball around the pitch. And it felt like Everton was like a whole step behind like what the other team was going to do. Mm-hmm. They're just like, I wouldn't say disorganized, but just caught off guard or something.
Yeah.
Opponent's completion percentage on medium and long balls was highest in the Premier League. They were getting beat and caught out of position in midfield quite often. Opponent's ability to turn defense into attack was easiest against Everton, as they conceded the most goals from opponents' defensive actions. I mean, that's what happens if you don't sit low block like they were early with Rafa. Mr. Keane and his colleagues are going to get exposed.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the terrible on dead ball defense, I think that's one of those things you didn't really notice because a team like Leicester was just so like almost like historically bad.
Yeah, there were a couple teams that were so bad.
But Everton was another one of those teams that was like, wow, okay, yeah, nice.
Yeah.
Downfall. Scoring efficiency dropped. D stopped holding up, and the playmaking dried up from early in the year.
Yeah, they didn't have that Ancelotti magic. They missed Calvert-Lewin for big stretches of the season. He never really was able to get going. End up relying on some young kid, Anthony Gordon coming in. Gray and Townsend started the season hot, but didn't last very long.
Solomon
Richarlison,
Rondon.
Solomon Rondon. Yeah, the fact that he was on this team says enough. Richarlison has got to be the most overrated player. He thinks he's the best player ever. Really, he's a penalty merchant. Completely underperformance for a £50 million price tag. Cannot stand watching that guy. Cannot stand watching Yerry Mina either. Michael Keane, one of the worst center backs in the league. They were cursed from the start when they hired former Liverpool manager Rafa Benitez, and the fans were against him from day one.
Yeah.
How no one had the foresight to say, this is probably not a good idea, just goes to show how poorly Everton are run.
Yeah.
They're almost into Watford territory. You know,
That's
they're
hard
like,
to get there.
Watford is like in their own
S tier.
tier.
Yeah, and then there's A tiers, Everton.
A tier is Everton.
Yeah. No, and they didn't really spend, and it looked like they might have got some bargain buys early on. And even,
Right.
Damari Gray getting 5 goals, you paid like £1 million for him.
Exactly.
That's still solid.
Yeah, exactly.
But I don't know. What you did in the past has come back to bite you. Spending 30 mil on a guy like Klaassen.
Mm-hmm.
You buy Sigurdsson, he can't even play. He's a nonce.
Yes.
You got Richarlison, 50 mil. Sam already touched on it. I mean, last year, you go back to, it's probably one of our first ever pods. I mentioned that Mane was probably the most overrated attacker because he was just so inefficient last year.
Mm-hmm.
But now this year, obviously, Mane bounced back. Richarlison has to be the king of inefficiency for attack.
Absolutely. 100%. I mean,
He was in second place last year. Now he stepped up to first. Said move over Sadio.
especially you think he got a few goals towards the end of the season, mostly penalties.
Yeah.
Imagine if he didn't get those, how glaringly bad it would show on his stats.
He's the ultimate. He can't score when you need him to score or like gimme opportunities.
Yeah.
But then he'll hit a bike against, who's that, like Norwich earlier this year. It's like, oh, so you hit that for
Right.
no reason.
Right.
It's like, oh, okay. Grade D minus. Should probably be an F, but they stayed up, so we give him a D minus.
Just so close, right on the edge of F.
Yeah, 60.9%. They're right on the brink. Silver lining stayed up. 1 or 2 marquee guys with 1 or 2 young guys kind of emerging. Anthony Gordon kind of emerging. You still have a guy like Ducare who's fine. Probably be better next year even. He's just kind of average this year. Normally slightly above average. I think next year he'll probably bounce back a bit. I'd say the one cause for concern is, not bringing in the right guys in terms of you have to definitely bring in youth because of this whole presence. It's one thing to be a veteran team and you have like a winning sense and like a certain presence, culture about your team. It's another thing when you have a bunch of vets and they're Solomon Rondon.
Mm-hmm.
And, that's kind of where Palace was at last summer. And they nuked it and they brought in the right core and look where they're at.
Right.
So,
I mean, you even look at a guy like Seamus Coleman. Like, respect to Seamus Coleman. He's had a great career. He's a great player.
You can't rely on him anymore.
But he's past it.
Yeah, he should be like a player coach where he's like just playing in like the FA Cup or like maybe a sub him on for last 15 or something.
Yeah,
but he shouldn't
kind of
be.
like the James Milner role.
Yeah.
You come in every now and then, but you're not a marquee player by any means. I mean, how many games did Seamus Coleman play? He played every game he was available.
Yeah. That's too much.
Too much.
Too much. Sam's take, huge warning sign for a club that is continually mismanaged. Will it come back to bite them?
I think this was...
Because you see this, and it turns into 2013 Newcastle, where there's no going back. It's just downhill slope.
Mm-hmm.
Or even like Sunderland too, where
Yeah,
it's just
true.
like there's no going back. It's downhill slope. Villa in like 2012 started to do it. It's just going downhill, and you
Yeah.
can't stop it. Do you think that's the same, or do you think this is that they'll wake up?
I think this was the wake-up call. I don't think they'll be as bad next year. They'll probably be bad, but I don't think they'll be as bad. This season was pretty catastrophic. And you consider that they didn't have one of their best players, Calvert-Lewin, for a good chunk of the season. I think
they
should,
also hired the man who solved football.
yes.
No one else could have kept them up. Just
True.
know that.
True. They definitely need to go for that youth approach, bring in some youth, get some guys on loan maybe. I would sell Richarlison. I think a lot of people are high on him still.
Yeah.
That really shouldn't be. So I would cash out on him.
I'm going to zag and say that it gets worse. I'm going to say that it goes the way of Villa,
It very
and
well
Sunderland, and
could.
Newcastle.
It very well could.
I think they're going to keep a lot of the same guys, and I don't think they're going to add a ton.
Mm-hmm.
Moving on, Southampton, the team who we learned nothing about last year nor this year.
No, they just exist.
Yeah. Top scorer, James Ward-Prowse, 10 goals. McAdams was 7.
That shocked me.
Really? I kind of felt like he scored like about that. I would have guessed, if you would have made me guess, I would have said 8.
It seemed like he didn't play that much.
No, he kind of, especially towards the end of the year, he kind of faded out, injury stuff and whatnot. But
Seems like he'd pop in, play a few games, and then he'd be gone for a while.
yeah,
Rinse and repeat.
well, we talked early in the year. Hans Hasenhudl, Mr. Hasenhudl, likes to kind of mix it up, and then he finds his groove, and he just rides that, and then once the groove's over, he's back to mixing and matching.
Yeah.
Best guys, I had their wing backs just all bunched together as their best guys.
Mm-hmm. First sneeze on the podcast.
Let's see. Yeah, Walker Peters, Livramento, the main two. You can throw Perot in there. He's fine. He's whatever. But those two main guys, Walker Peters and Livramento, are so good for him.
Yeah, I got to say, Walker Peters. I mean, obviously, Livramento, we wouldn't expect anything out of him because we haven't seen much other than like he was highly touted as a Chelsea Academy player.
Yep.
But in terms of Walker Peters, he didn't do too much last season, but I think he really stepped up into his own this season.
Yeah.
He can play on both sides. I think he really adjusted into that role of being like, okay, I'll play wherever you need me.
Yeah.
And I'm going to do pretty good.
I'm going to just throw it out there. And I'm not saying that he's like super high quality, but I think a guy like that is what someone like a Manchester United needs.
Yeah.
In terms of versatility, kind of plug and play. Seems like hungry when he's on the pitch. He's like wanting to do stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And he wouldn't cost like that much. I don't know.
Right.
Second,
more of a team-oriented player.
yes. Second, James Ward-Prowse. People, I think, would be shocked to hear this.
Yeah.
Sam would probably have him third or fourth.
No, I think second is fair.
Yeah.
You look at his contributions, most of them came from, I think he had 2 open play goals.
I think 2 or 3, yeah.
And the rest were free kicks and penalties.
For whatever reason, I can only think of the one against Brighton towards the end of the year.
Yeah. I think it was 2, but it might have been 1. Either way, you could say, well, that's inflated, whatnot.
Yeah.
It is good to have a guy who can, take good free kicks and score penalties, but I do think he gets pretty overrated.
People
in
like
terms
to
of
act,
value.
People like to act like he's got a lot of defensive aspect to him. He's not a good defensive player. I don't know where he gets that stigma.
He's neither a good defensive player or a good offensive player. He's good on dead ball situations, and that's about it. The rest of the time, he's pretty mediocre.
Yeah. No, I would say that he's above average in attack, but below average in defense.
I think he's just... I don't think he's really a defensive type player.
I feel like people want him in the England squad because they feel like he could even fit that Calvin Phillips role.
Yeah, he's definitely more of just like a box-to-box kind of guy.
Yeah, he's just an 8. But too much talk about somehow player of the year candidate, James Ward-Prowse.
Yeah.
I have Salisu as the third star. He had his ups and downs, but I don't know. I just like the way he covers a lot of space. And Bednarek's not like bad, but Bednarek is kind of more that stable. He clears headers
Very
and stuff.
one-dimensional.
Yeah. So Salisu offering that pace and a lot of ability to kind of press up on guys and win and tackle more than a center back normally does. I just like that about him.
Yeah,
don't know.
Salisu's more of your modern-day center back as opposed to your traditional Bednarak.
Yes. What is this thing auto-corrected on us and put 3/4 rather than...
Fractions.
They twice won 3 out of 4 games.
They won 3/4 of
with
their
the
game.
fourth result being a draw. So what's that? That's 10 points from 4 games. They did that twice.
Yeah, that's impressive.
Yeah, it's pretty solid.
And that really kept them going throughout the season. They'd have their runs.
Yes. Worst, 1 point from last 6 games.
That's
And
pretty
this
bad.
is where we were last year, though, where it's like they're fine, I guess, and then they close out so bad, and you're just doubting them, and you're like, oh, this
Yeah.
is going downhill, isn't it? Best formation, 4-4-2, but really that second guy's kind of, it's the Adams role of like a false 9, kind of.
In a lot of ways, they remind me of Burnley in the sense, they both play 4-4-2. They both have midfielders who are just kind of like
Yeah.
meh, and they're not suited one way or the other towards
Yeah.
attack or defense. You struggle to find that second striker who can produce. And it's kind of like the revolving door.
Yes. They don't know what they necessarily have.
Yeah.
Yeah. Attack, solid at creating chances, but efficiency of executing the chances. Adios mio, Southampton. And this is why expected goals should be thrown out the window.
Mm-hmm.
There's no, I think Southampton was like -5 for their expected goals. Like they scored 5 less than they should have. But they were like, I think it was like 13th or 14th, like in terms of minus. Like a bunch of teams had like minus like 7 or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
There's no way. Southampton literally had like 10 tap-in goals this year.
Yeah.
That they didn't convert.
They could have, if you take like a highlight blooper reel of the worst misses, you could make one that's for the whole league, except it's compromised of just Southampton
Yeah.
fails.
Yeah, you could do one for the league and then one for just Southampton, and they'd probably be just as long.
Yeah.
Passing was meh. Long balls were a tough spot. They really couldn't really feed Brozier Armstrong in behind.
Mm-hmm.
Near the bottom in assists, and that's just kind of lacking that 10. Like, that's why they kind of try to go with a false 9, but unbelievable. Set piece, obviously a strength. Had the most shots off of drawn fouls. Goalkeeping not great, despite your guy, Mr. Fraser Forster, showing flashes at times where he looked okay. They still have that carousel to deal with.
He exceeded my expectations.
Well,
I'll say
yeah,
that.
But I mean, just in general, because early in the year, it wasn't like it was very good with Alex McCarthy, and they even brought in Willie Caballero for crying out loud.
Yeah.
So, opponent's passing percentage was lowest against Southampton of any team. That surprise you? They're kind of relatively high in terms of pressing success.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah, when they were playing well, they were pressing.
yeah. Teams had some efficient finishing against Southampton. Again, I feel like that's just kind of, if Salisu's caught out, they're really going to be caught out. Southampton, one of, if not the best, at turning defense into attack, which is kind of strange. You don't really think of them as like kind of a counter team, especially since they're not very good at long balls. Good press and intercepting, not that great at tackling, which kind of goes along with what you're saying in terms of they don't really have like, they're all okay at stuff, but not really great. If you have a defensive anchor out there, you're always generally pretty decent at tackling. They don't have that guy. unless you count your boy Oriol Romeo.
Yeah, definitely not.
Downfall. This is in all caps. Blowing 26 points from winning positions. Bring up the table real quick. Where does 26 extra points get them? They're at 40. 40. They're at 40.
Yep.
Keep going. Keep going.
So 56 gets them tied for 7th. Oh, wait, no. What'd you
No,
say,
it's-
26?
Yeah.
Oh, so
Yeah.
it'd be 66.
They would be almost in the Champions League.
I mean, realistically, say 13, 53. That puts them in 8th place.
Yeah. That's
Feasible. Definitely feasible.
especially when you look at the other teams that are non-top 6 in terms of blowing games. Like there's some team or from like winning positions. There's some teams that had like 2. Like I think Brentford had like 2.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's definitely doable, but maybe it's not
Absolutely.
for Southampton.
Absolutely.
All right, what do we have left for Southampton? A grade? D plus, C minus? Probably C minus. That's a little depends on what your expectations were. If you had a little higher expectations, D plus. If you didn't have much hope for him, you'd probably go C minus.
Yeah, I think C minus. If you look solely at the season alone.
Yeah. Silver lining, some young guys showed flashes. Still have vets that can be replaced.
Yeah.
If they wanted to, do you think they could get what's the number on James Ward-Prowse's head right now? 50?
I mean, the rumor was 40 million to Villa earlier in the season.
Yeah. So you
I think some soccer would pay it.
I have a bad feeling it would be like a bigger team.
It'd be so funny if United bought James Ward-Prowse. Like, it would be the most United thing ever.
James Ward-Prowse. James Ward-Prowse.
Well, I've seen him take free kicks. He's really good.
Sam's take. What do you got?
My take lines up when I was saying about the grade. If you look at this season, it was fine. Like you said, they could have done a lot better from winning positions, finish higher up in the table. But there is a startling trend. You look at teams around them who are starting to splash the cash. You look at teams like Villa, teams like Newcastle.
You're going to get left in the dust.
You're going to get left in the dust, and
That's what I was saying a couple podcasts ago about they feel very Swansea, last days of Swansea to me.
Yeah.
Moving on. Aston Villa. Watkins, 11. Ings, 7 for top scores. Best guys, I ranked them Ramsey, McGinn, and Matty Cash. Is that fair? Would you have someone else in there?
I think I would put Matty Cash 1, McGinn 2, Ramsey 3.
Okay. That's fair.
So-
They're all very close in my mind.
Yeah.
I'm definitely
Yeah, no
flexible
one-
in terms
no
of
one
moving it
really-
around.
Stood out as being the guy.
Those 3 guys were like their best players by far.
Yeah.
Best stretch 3-1-1 early on. Won 3 in a row in late February to early March. Worst, a 5-game losing streak got Mr. Dean Smith fired, and a 4-game losing streak, which is right after a 3-game win streak, goes to show the inconsistencies this team faced this year.
Yeah, I was about to say that pretty much sums it up. 4 games right after a 3-game win streak.
Yeah. Best formation 4-3-3. Close to second for the 4-4-2 formation.
Yeah, I think that's still in progress.
Yeah.
Figuring out what their best formation is, what guys wear.
Yes. Trent, middle of the pack in terms of attacking efficiency, middle of the pack in terms of passing, middle of the pack in terms of defensive categories. What do you notice? This team is middle of the pack.
Mm-hmm.
It's just about less high highs and low lows and kind of evening it out, I feel like, for them.
Yeah, absolutely.
Downfall, inconsistency all over the pitch. Mings and the 2 Emmys were disappointing at times and didn't get the best out of Ings or Watkins. Look here, listen.
Look here, listen. Buying lots of players is
I
not
was
going to
gonna
fix it.
say, buy Coutinho. It's not gonna fix it.
Yeah, I think it. Tyrone Mings underperforming, pretty disappointing. He was.
Yeah. Especially for being in the England squad, and
Yeah.
people kind of think high of him.
I thought he was really good last season. Emi Martinez was really good. Emi Buendia never really got settled. At times they looked good, but for the most part, I didn't think he looked that good.
Yeah, he is the epitome of Villa this year. I feel like his highs were really high and his lows were really low.
Mm-hmm.
He did create a good amount of chances, but at the same time, it's like balance that out. Like if you average like take your totals and divide it by game, and you average like 4 chances created a game, don't go in with 8 one game and then 0 with the next. Keep it relatively close.
Yeah. Yeah, and
What were
talking
we gonna
about
say?
Ings and Watkins, the idea being that, one of them's going when the other one's maybe
Yeah.
not going, or maybe they're both going, you play both of them.
Mm-hmm.
Really, neither of them got going.
Yeah,
And,
to say the least.
and-
It just never really clicked.
yeah,
Ings had chances. I felt like he was better early in the year, and then it kind of faded. Watkins had kind of moments throughout the middle of the year to late in the year.
Mhm.
But, yeah, it just never really clicked the way you thought it would.
Yeah.
That's the way I thought it would. I thought it'd be all right for him.
Yeah, especially considering how much you're spending on Ings to bring him in at the age he is,
Yeah.
knowing you're not going to get a return out of him. He didn't provide that much value.
No. What was it, 30 mil? Something like that?
Something like that, yeah.
25, something. Grade, I went C minus.
I would put him more at a C
Okay.
because the potential is there.
Well, I just did for this season, the way I saw it.
Yeah.
Coming in this year, I thought
No,
they'd
no,
still
no,
be
no. I
better.
mean, the potential was shown this season too at times.
Yeah. I don't know.
And I think
just,
that makes me think favorable of him. But then
I think I was
there's-
just really frustrated with the inconsistency.
there's part of me that sees people like, oh, look at Stevie G, look at Aston Villa, look at what they're doing.
Yeah.
Part of me is like,
They haven't really done much
well,
yet.
well, no, you have to look at the actual results.
Yeah.
And if you look at the actual results, take out the fluff of the shine of Stevie G,
Mm-hmm.
you get down to the hard facts. And it's an inconsistent team.
Yes. Couldn't agree more. Silver lining, the emergence of Ramsey and a solid back-to-back windows. Just keep building that momentum. I thought that their window was fine. Was Buendia the best? No. Was Ings the best? No. Digne was pretty good for him.
Yeah, that was a good game.
Callum Chambers was pretty good for him.
Mm-hmm.
So, there's still success out there for Villa. It's just a matter of kind of harnessing that even more. They already brought in a player on free from Marseille for midfield help. There's talks they might sell Douglas Luiz. I don't know about that, but we'll see.
Didn't they get a guy from Sevilla as well?
Yes,
Carlos.
yes, and another fullback. So, a lot of additions. Just like you're saying about Southampton, they are going to get left in the dust. If Villa keep having, even if they're like pretty decent summers, sure you might whiff on a guy or two, but if 2 out of 3 are hits, pretty good.
Yeah, and that's the thing about Villa is that it looks like they're just going to keep spending. I read that they have like the third or fourth richest owners in the league.
Yeah,
So the money is there. If players don't work out, it doesn't matter. You'll see them spending on guys who they might not get a return out of, like Ings. They're not
Yep.
afraid to spend that kind of money. So, yeah, I think there's potential. And my take is what I kind of already alluded to, but I said the hype and shine around Stevie G will not last forever. Results must be better, and you need to get solid production out of the attack, whether that be Buendia, Watkins, Ings, Coutinho. I'm worried about Coutinho,
yeah.
that he just had a really hot start.
They scored against Man City.
But I guess we'll see.
I feel the same way as you. 13th, Brentford. Top scorer, Ivan Toney with 12. Second scorer, Johan Wissa with 7.
How's that possible?
Because anytime he got subbed on, he scored out of nowhere. Best guys, I went Norgard, Pinnock, and then Ayer/Canos. And I just made a side note that Eriksson was legit world class for them. Is that fair? Would you have included anyone else?
I would just say Eriksson as number 1, even though he only played half the season.
That's why I had him as a side note.
Yeah.
But if we're taking the regular squad, I think Norgard was the best.
Mm-hmm.
Best stretch was March 5th to April 16th. They won 5 of 6. Only loss was to Leicester.
That was such a massive run of games.
Yes. The worst stretch was a 5-game and 4-game losing streak.
Yeah, they had some really poor runs of form where we were quite concerned about them.
Yes, we were.
And it looked like they were going to potentially go down, but that streak from March 5th to April 14th really pulled them out. Eriksson was massive.
Yeah.
And it was amazing that they could turn it around despite how poorly they had been playing.
All they needed was one guy that could really link the midfield to attack a little more than what they had, because they didn't fully have that.
And you also think about the set piece aspect of it too.
Oh yeah,
Brentford's a team that thrives on scoring from set pieces. You bring in a guy
guess what? Here's an
like
elite,
Eriksson.
Yeah, elite level deliver the ball.
Yeah.
Best formation, mainly the 3-5-2. Also moments for 4-3-3, and even I know you really like this early on in the year, was or middle of the year during their stretch, was the 4-5-1 where they just kind of pack the midfield. Mm-hmm. Trends, most attack categories, they're ranked kind of just right where they were in the table, around 13th, like that. They were like 12th or 14th in some, but around there. Didn't turn defense into attack much, not really much counterattack. Obviously effective when it came to set piece chances and drawing fouls that led to chances. Not a great dribbling team, which makes sense given their midfield. Opponents' completion percentage got worse in rank as path length increased, which meant like they gave up a lot of the short passes, but the medium and long passes they did not give up. There was not much success for the opponents, pretty much meaning they didn't really allow much in terms of counterattack.
That stat, like I can't comprehend.
I can't get the words out of my mouth. The opponent's completion percentage got worse in rank as pass length increased. So yeah, the short passes they gave up a bunch.
Let me tell you about the short passes, and I'm
They
doing
gave
some,
up
like,
short passes,
doing
but then
some
the
math, and
long
the numbers are flying out.
teams could not pass medium or long against them, which meaning they were not susceptible to the counterattack, which we thought coming in the year.
Okay, yeah. Okay.
We did. Because I mean that's kind of what their thing was in the championship.
Yeah.
Average at intercepting, tackling, pressing, high in errors that led to opponent shots, which I don't really remember them having like a ton of defensive errors.
No.
But apparently. Downfall, finishing was rough first stretch. Couldn't get set pieces for attack. The attack kind of got left on the island at times. Yeah, that rough stretch they had, they really could get nothing going in attack. It wasn't like the defense wasn't good, but the attack gave them no support, so it just kind of left them exposed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they had a good attack, but all too often they were just disjointed. And,
Yes.
Maybe they'd get the ball up to them, and those guys couldn't do anything after that. They didn't really have anyone coming from the midfield to link up with. And at times they were just playing poorly themselves.
Yes. For grade, I give them a B+. They finished slightly above where we had them coming into the year.
Mm-hmm.
We at least had them staying up. A lot of people had them going down. Surprising, but is that fair? B+? Would you say B?
I'd say B+, almost an A, if they didn't have those awful runs of form in the middle of the season. But overall, very successful first season back in the Premier League. Massive triumph.
Silver lining for me, their play holds up in the Premier League.
Mm-hmm.
You have strong manager in Mr. Frank. Not Fat Frank, but Mr. Frank, Thomas
Yes.
Frank.
The Dane Frank.
Yes. Dane Frank. Yeah, no, I think that's enough. What's your take on it, Sam's take?
My take going forward, can Brentford survive without Eriksson? He was massive in the second half of the season. Unlikely that they'll be able to retain him when Champions League teams come knocking.
Yeah.
How do they replace that?
I have faith in them to get some semblance of a replacement. I just don't know if as far as like how a replacement that would just be a 10 would fit into the lineup. Because they like that 4-3-3.
Right.
So I'm not sure that the balance Eriksson provided them in the midfield was so good that it's like that's almost impossible to replace.
Yeah.
Just like for like.
Yeah.
So they'll have to find some adjustment and find a guy who can come in to at least provide some semblance of passing forward.
Yeah, I think that's one of those scenarios where you need like two guys to replace one
Yeah.
for what he does.
Agreed. Moving on, 12th place, Crystal Palace. Top score, Wilf Zaha with 14. How about that? Conor Gallagher with 8 in second.
Very nice production out of Mr. Wilf.
Yes. The career year out of nowhere. Best guys, Gallagher, back line, then I had Wilf. And then I almost have to give a shout out to most of the damn team. Edouard was solid. Etse, Elise, MacArthur, Mateta. They didn't really all play enough to be justified in there, but when they did play, they all were pretty solid.
I don't know if I'd throw in Edouard or Eze just because he didn't play very much.
That's why they're not
I think
in there, but
I like the mix of Elise, MacArthur, and Mateta kind of as a trio there.
yeah, well, the official trio is Gallagher, the back line, which is actually 4 guys, and then
Yeah.
Wilf.
Yeah.
I was just
I'm saying
gonna
as
put-
like one entity.
Yes. I was going to put just Mitchell, but I was like, Guehi and Anderson were too solid as well. I'm just going to put the whole back line. And Joel Ward, honestly, had
Yeah.
an above average year, too.
Yeah, I thought he did really well filling in at that right back spot.
Best stretch, 3-1-1 to close out. They went 3-2-0 in late February through April. Also a 2-5-0 stretch, so they didn't lose, but I don't know if you want to have 5 draws in 7 games.
You know, I think a big thing for Palace is when they were playing poorly, they didn't go on these runs where
It stuck with them, and they like brought it game to game.
yeah, they didn't have like a 5-game losing streak or a 6-game losing streak like some of the other teams. Of course, start of the season was rough, but that was to be expected.
Yeah.
But then after that, it was kind of like smooth sailing from there.
Yeah, their longest losing streak was 3 games, and their longest winless run, which included a few draws, to start 2022 is 6 games. So,
Yeah.
you know. Best formation, 4-3-3. Some success with 4-2-3-1 as well. Trends, crowding the box, applying lots of pressure, unable to get clean shots off. High intensity midfield pressing, playing well, feeding Wilf, getting Gallagher running. You get him north and south. I mean, that's just special what that guy can do.
Yeah, you had kind of your golden zones. You get the ball to Wilf on the wing, or you get the ball to Gallagher on the edge of the box.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a good spot for those guys to do some work.
Yeah, I think one thing that Chelsea getting Gallagher back next year will be massive for them is he can kind of ease pressure on you. Don't have to play Kovacic all the time just for like his ability to just dribble to create space. Mm-hmm. But I mean, even better than Kovacic, because Kovacic doesn't really do a ton going forward, is going to be Gallagher's ability to actually kind of distribute when running forward.
Yeah.
Yes, the downfall, inexperienced defense at times, making mistakes, sometimes getting overran in midfield, misfiring attack. It felt like every once in a while they had like just one facet of the game go wrong, which, going back to Villa for a second, Villa, like, it seemed like whenever they had a bad game, like, all facets of the game were just bad.
Mm-hmm.
Palace, it kind of felt like it was just like one bunch during the game would have a bad run, whether it's the attackers or the midfield was non-existent or the defense was kind of shaky.
Yeah. Yeah, I thought it was interesting, kind of the use of rotation. They had a lot of different guys playing in attack, some variance in how they played the midfield as well. Sometimes they had Kouyaté sitting in there kind of as like a true defensive midfielder.
Yeah.
Sometimes they
try to get with him at center back.
Sometimes center back, sometimes a little more aggressive, having MacArthur in there just running all over the place. Sometimes Gallagher pushing a little farther back.
And don't count out Mr. Schlupp getting forward at times
Jeff
this year.
Schlupp, yeah.
Yeah, they had such a nice balance, this squad. I really, literally, probably my favorite or one of my top 3 favorites for sure.
Yeah, I like the different options that they have. And it helps when you have a solid back line to build off of.
Yes. Grade A-. I don't think it really could have gone much better for Palace. We were sitting here last year saying this could go really good or really bad. And we liked what they were doing, and we're like, we have faith. We have faith in Palace. They're our guys.
Yeah.
Guess what?
At the end of last season, we were thinking, oh, man, Palace is doomed.
Well, if they did it the wrong way, if they would have brought in Musa Sissoko, and they're like, no, look, this guy, he's on Tottenham.
Yeah.
Instead, they're like, oh, here's a really cheap, young, up-and-coming guy from Reading for €7 million. Let's bring him in.
Yeah, there was a massive undertaking that had to be done there, and they did it spot on.
Yes.
Well done.
Credit to Vieira, too. We didn't know coming into the year.
Mm-hmm.
That was, honestly, we didn't know about the whole situation at first. Then we saw the players they brought in. We liked that. And then we were kind of shaky on Vieira. We're like, we don't really know. Not Premier League experienced.
Yeah.
We'll see. I did a really good job with the squad.
Yeah, absolutely. Massive credit to Vieira. Massive credit to the board. And, scouts, transfer management, all that.
Silver lining, obviously, the young core. Sam's take.
Really what I already just said.
Yes.
They managed
You
the
stole your own
transitionary period to a T. You couldn't have done it any better. And it was one of the most difficult undertakings I've seen
In quite some time.
in quite some time of watching the Premier League. You look at a team at the end of last season and you say, there is a lot that has to be done, and I don't think that Palace is the side that's going to do it. But they proved us wrong, and they did it.
Yes.
They brought in a young core. They brought in a good young manager.
Yeah.
And they're building the right way.
You love to see it. Do you love to see this, though? 11th place, Newcastle United.
I don't.
Here comes the pain. Everyone else in the top 4, here comes the pain.
Sweating intensifies.
Top score, Callum Wilson with 8. St. Maximin and Bruno G with 5. Best guys, Wilson, Bruno G, ASM, Joelinton. I think I would probably have Joelinton as number 2. And I'd probably have Bruno G as 1, even though he played half the year.
Yeah, I was
and
on the edge.
I think I'd have Dan Burn at 3.
Okay. I put Callum Wilson because it is insane how good he can play after being out for like months.
Yes.
He'll come in and he'll be like, okay, I'm going to score like 3 goals in 3 games.
Yeah. No,
it's like not fair. Like, how is he so good at this?
Yeah, he's one of those guys where you just have to put up with the injuries. You know you're going to get 25 games out of him, and you know he'll probably get you somewhere between like 10 to 15 goals.
Yeah.
That's just what it is. Best stretch was match week 21 to 28. 6 wins, 2 draws.
Massive.
Worst. Well, they didn't win until match week 15.
We thought they were doomed.
Well, everyone thought they were doomed. Best formation, 4-3-3 action out there for them. Yeah, they just looked a whole lot better under Howe, and they're able to kind of control the game, possess the game.
Mm-hmm.
They set their own pace to the game a lot of times.
Yeah.
And I mean, getting Dan Byrne, it was always kind of there in terms of they didn't have to just sit back and, play low block, but I feel like Dan Byrne really opened up their ability to not have to only play low block.
Yeah, for sure.
And I don't think anything can be said about how good this midfield was this year.
Crazy. Who would have thought the midfield, guys like Joelinton,
It was probably like
Shelby, Longstaff.
slightly above average before Bruno G got there with just Joelinton, Longstaff, Shelby. That was probably above average. And Willick sliding in there too occasionally. It was probably like the ninth best, and that's still like, wow. You throw Bruno G in there.
Yeah.
That was like top 5 midfield.
Mm-hmm. And
They-
really, from guys you wouldn't expect it, Joelinton turning it around, absolutely massive. I mean, he completely undertook a new position.
Yeah, he went from a striker to last year he kind of moved a little out wide, more on the left side, and now he's just kind of like a central mid.
Yeah, crazy. You got to respect. I mean, he was getting a lot of stick from the fans, but, he persevered,
Yeah.
always worked hard, so massive respect.
Downfall first half of the year was absolutely terrible. Our boy Bruce Ball, it wasn't going.
It was good for the
Unfortunately.
memes.
It really was.
Very good for the memes.
You gave a grade first half D minus, second half A minus. So that comes out to C plus.
Yeah, I'd put more weight on the second half of the season.
So you just in general you give him like a B plus.
Yeah, I'd say
Okay.
I'd say B plus. Honestly, the way that they finished the season was awesome.
No, it definitely has to be, I would say, a B plus as well.
The fact that they could get the fans back on their side for a team like Newcastle, massive, massive, massive. Because Newcastle, huge support. If you have a big stadium like that going against you every game,
Yeah,
that's hurting you a
that's
lot.
brutal.
But when they're on your side, cheering you on, pushing you forward, Newcastle in the second half of the season at home lost like once to Liverpool, I think.
Yeah.
They were immense at home,
Yeah, no, it was definitely a fortress, St. James Park.
which is the way it should be.
Yes, for a big club.
Yeah.
Silver lining, brilliant second half, new owners, new coach, optimism for next season.
Absolutely.
Sam's take, this team will be competing for the top 6 in 2 years or less. I feel like it might be next year if they bring in another guy or two in the summer that's not necessarily like elite, like you know him already and stuff, but if they bring in a guy as quality as Bruno G for your defense or your attack, I mean, that's...
Yeah, I think the question will be, can they do it over the course of a year?
True.
It's a long
the thing,
season.
The thing they still have going for them until they get into Europe is that they're not in Europe, and
Right.
they won't have those extra games.
Right, that helps massively.
So, is there any team that stood out to you in putting this together that you really want to talk about? Any team you didn't want to talk about besides Norwich?
Yeah, besides the obvious, I think the most intriguing teams, Crystal Palace for the rebuild,
Yes.
Brentford for the fact that they're newly promoted and finished as high as they did, Villa for the fact that there's a lot of hype around them, but ultimately the results
Yeah.
weren't that great. On the other side of the coin, a team like Southampton, like you
Yes.
said, we haven't learned anything about them, and
I
that's
know.
concerning because if you're not moving forward in this league, you're moving back,
Yeah.
and that's the only way we both see
This is true.
Southampton going.
Yeah. Yeah, I would say the least exciting team to talk about was definitely Watford. Because at least Norwich you can laugh about how like historically bad they were.
Yeah,
I would say an interesting team that we talked about was Leeds, but only because, not because of what we said in terms of why their season went the way they did, but when I threw that out there as a potential rebuild, in terms of you just sell Phillips, you sell Rafinha, and you bring in more depth. That idea for Leeds, I really like that, and I think it's interesting that they might be doing that. I'd give them like a 50-50 shot whether they're going to sell those guys and bring in more youth, bring in more depth. So, but no, the most intriguing team and compelling team to talk about is definitely Crystal Palace.
Yeah. I think the thing with Leeds, the way that they play, you shouldn't be relying on like one or two star players because of the intensity of the system you play. Like guys are going to get hurt and stuff, and you're going to need to rotate guys. So you really need like a strong team dynamic.
Yeah, they really, that's the one thing about last year that no one ever talked about. They didn't really have that many injuries. Mm-hmm. Everyone stayed relatively fit, and they got ninth.
Yeah, they had a thin squad, and it didn't hurt them last season.
Yeah, Bielsa's like, we can do it again. It's like, no.
No.
And now you are out.
Yeah.
All right, next week, the top half preview. I hope you're ready. I hope you're ready for the pod to be 1.5, 2 hours long, and 1 hour will be spent on Wolverhampton Wanderers. Until then, adios.
Bye.